at 10:07. So our mission statement, North Platte Public Schools is a destination school district and community that embraces innovative opportunities, distinguished programs to create highly competitive advantages for all students, instilling the canteen spirit in an evolving world. The canteen spirit embodies generosity, selflessness, and unwavering support through service, pride, collaboration, and grit. Sheila, can we get roll call?
Yes, and you'll be out of order, so be aware.
That's fine.
Justin Thompson.
Present.
Joanne Lynn Green.
Present.
Emily Garrett.
Present.
Cindy O'Connor.
Present.
Skip Balti.
Present.
Angela Blazy.
Present.
Okay, at this time, we will open it up if there is any public comment. Sheila, do we have any?
I have none.
Okay, excellent. We will now dive into the meat of our budget work session. And I will turn it over. Stuart, are you ready?
I'm getting it
Send
up
your
here
data to us?
so
Okay,
that we
that's
can.
okay, we'll give you a minute. So you did all get the same packet in an email,
Yep.
and then you've got one there in front of you. So I would say we'll start with having Stuart kind of walk us through, and then Stuart, are you okay if we have questions on the way through?
Yeah,
Can
we
we
can
stop you and
we can
ask them
stop
as
and
they come
and
up?
ask as they're going through. I just wanted to.
Yeah.
Download it and just so I can display it. I'm going to display only because then if anybody else would prefer to watch instead of look, that's all I'm doing. Otherwise, you're sure welcome to walk through the document that I've given. One more, going to stream it. You received the document in the email. I have updated this document a little bit from just clarification of some dates as well as some wording we just wanted to re-clarify. So what you have in front of you is a fresh one, and skip RA for me. I typed it in wrong. I must have been looking at the wrong month, but it is July 28th is the committee of the whole in August.
Yeah.
So, and why we maybe just to re-clarify, why we say budget hearing at the committee of the whole in August is in the past, the board had requested to do the hearing in August before the September workshops or the September board meetings because they wanted to maybe, if there was any clarification in regards to property taxes or anything else, they wanted to have time to change that or clarify it. And as we go through that, we have multiple hearings, so we wanted to make sure that we addressed everything appropriately. This number is fluid. You can change it accordingly. And obviously, dates are important. The bottom I noticed today it says May 30th. It should be, we updated it yesterday. So dates are changing always. But the bottom line is, I put it at the bottom, the budget is only a tool to help the district accomplish its strategic plan, which is what we focus on as we go through this. And that's on the first page that we have is the strategic plan. And Joanne and Emily went through that process of updating the strategic plan. So we continually focus on that one, which the budget should always align to that process. On page 2, really this details through the TIOSA document. TIOSA is our state aid formula, and in that identifying various factors that affect the formula, as well as just to remind you, we may say some words, but it just really just clarifies what the document is. The TIOSA formula really identifies needs in the district, identifies our resources, and then if we need to, they then add in additional state aid or equalization aid within the formula. And in those factors, it looks at student enrollment, per pupil cost, limited English, free and reduced, which is the poverty program. And when I say the poverty program, it's not a grant, it's just a program within our educational area that we can separate out costs that associate to poverty within the district. And then finally, system averaging adjustment. Because we're a large district, we get a little piece of the pie compared to Lincoln and Omaha. Summer school allowance. Lindsay's going through summer school every year, and we get a little piece of that. as well as our sped costs and transportation.
I think maybe I'll interject. I know
You're fine.
we've talked about this before as a board. You know, the factors, and if you look over the course of the last 5 years, and you have this in your packet, you know that we've had a reduction in state aid. So the two factors that we have experienced in terms of that loss of state aid, the biggest factor has been the increase in property valuation across the school district. And I think it's important for the record that we just state, we don't have anything to do with setting valuations. That happens at the county level, but it's that part of your local effort rate, and that valuation is such a key component to TIOSA. And so when you see that huge increase, 2 years ago it was over 10%, last year was over 8%, the formula tells you you can go and get those funds from the people. The state is not going to provide you that state aid. So you'll notice over the course of 5 years, we've lost about $1.3, $1.4 million of state aid.
Right.
And I know you know that. I think it's just important for the record.
And that's why when you look down at the last statement, it talks about the resources that help drive the needs. And the big one that I underlined there was property valuations because of that. We don't get option enrollment. We have more going out than coming in, as well as an allocated income tax and miscellaneous receipts. Miscellaneous receipts have been constant. I mean, fluctuate 100,000 one way or another, but for the most part, we look at, as Dr. Rode mentioned, valuations and how that drives the formula. So as we go through this, if you would look at last year's information, I have added some new information as we go in there, and I will address those accordingly. But I try to give you a lot of data points as we go through this because it's very important as we look at the district and how we're funding the school. So first of all, the most important piece is enrollment and where we stand in comparison to our tier of schools. And we'll also see our tier of schools in another place within the document. But I'm always cognizant of where we are on our enrollment in comparison to at least the schools that surround us, similar size, and then obviously our bottom of our tier. We have been competing with Columbus as well as South Sioux City on the number of students in our district. Those two have grown, so that's why we've all of a sudden been moved down into our tier. And then watching the schools that are just right below us, Ralston and Hastings, big concern in regards to are they going to grow? Metro area always growing, but where will they be in comparison to North Platte next year? And then obviously Hastings is another piece. So that's why I put that in there. The other next item is our SPED reimbursement. And with special education, when I first put it in here, it was really the amount of money that we're getting reimbursed from the state, which was at around 40 to 45% from the state. Now we're sitting at 80%. We will not know the final number for this year because, as I underlined in there, we get reimbursements from December through June. And in that, then we'll know how much we will get 80% reimbursement, but then we'll know exactly how much money we got in special ed reimbursement coming in, which will then play a factor in next year's state aid formula. Just FYI. The next piece, I talked a little bit about poverty. I have, over the course, and you can see over the course of, I want to say 10 years, we have increased our poverty allowance because that was one of the needs side of the formula. So if we can increase that one, that increases, in theory, our state aid coming back into the district. And we know that we have been increasing in our poverty allowance. We have grown from when I first came here at 35% to now we're upwards near 60% within the district. And so we know but plus we also have 5 schools that are CEP. Not all of them are full level poverty, but we know Lincoln, Jefferson, Washington, and Cody sit close to 50 or 100% poverty. So in that, we can shove as much money from those schools within the poverty program and support, as well as we try to identify other factors that will continually increase our poverty and helping in the district.
Stuart, do you want to explain the difference between how that SPED reimbursement affects the state aid formula versus how an allowance? Because I think a lot of times when people look at this document, they think that automatically you're getting a reimbursement because you're getting this approved allowance, and that is not the way that works. Can you talk a little bit more about how that affects the formula itself?
And, yeah, why don't we flip, I'm going to flip to, it'll say the state aid calculation. I'm not going to say a number because the spreadsheets that are here are not, it'll look like this.
What page number?
What page is it on?
It's
in your
not,
hand?
there is no number. It'll all say
Go
one.
towards the
Yeah,
back.
they've been-
So it'll be at the, we'll say we're thinking 16, page 16.
Right here with the.
Yep. So what, I think what Dr. Rhodes is saying, and I want to make sure, is that when we look at the state aid formula, it's need minor resources, and the needs side plays a factor in how much we're going to need to support our education of our students. And the poverty allowance is really just separating out our instructional program into the poverty allowance so that we can garner more state aid. So for example, you can look over the past 4 years where we were at 4.8 million in the poverty allowance allocated by the state. This is not allocated by us. We try to put as much money into that poverty allowance as we can, but the state, based upon their free and reduced allocation from the Fed level, drives that factor more than what we drive. Now, we try to put as much in there and get as much as we can, but the state will all of a sudden say, no, you're going to only get this, or yes, you can get this amount of money. We're always a year behind. The state is still trying to get data from the Fed level in support of poverty for North Platte as well as all other school districts in the state. So hopefully we can continually increase that piece to help drive the need side of the formula. The other piece that you will see is the special ed allowance. Now, in the past, last year when they increased our support to 80%, we didn't get that penalty on our state aid document. We were still sitting at the 40% reimbursement. But now all of a sudden, because we're getting that 40% reimbursement, they're saying, okay, this is how much money, and how the state works it is you're going to get 4.7 million in reimbursement, and then they're going to put on the, the resource side, the same dollar amount. So they look at the revenue side. They do not look at how much we expend in special ed, because we always know we're spending more because of our needs of our students, but in the process, they're just taking what revenue they have. They say that's how much you're going to need to support your students. The rest, in essence, has to come out of property taxes for support of special ed. No different than anything else, but that's what the state does. Anything else that you want to say, Dr. Rhodes, before we move on?
No, I don't think so. I just think it's important that when you look at those numbers, that when it comes to the allowance side, is as those numbers grow, and they do grow. I mean, most time our allowances in poverty and special education in particular, we're going to expend more on an annual basis just because of the cost of educating all of our students, but those students that qualify in those two areas. But what is approved by the state in terms of those allowances helps the district in terms of the state aid formula because it goes in as a need, so it grows the need side of the formula.
So if you go back to now the true page number 6, we're gonna continue through the documentation. And I'm going to back up because when Dr. Rhodes and I were going through it yesterday with Lindsay, I was telling Lindsay, I put this together probably 10 or so years ago because working with my national organization, ASBO, they always have a meritorious budget award. Well, we don't do accrual accounting, but they did give me ideas of communicating it out to not only the board, but the public about all the information that we have. And so it's better to have it in front of you so that you can use it. So that's where the document came from. So I just wanted to let you know. And I continually, like I said, modify it. So valuations. I put this one in, we didn't have it last year, but I put it in this year because I really wanted to give you a historical perspective of where we've been over the last 7 years of valuations. And you know, when we look at 2020 to 2022, you know, our valuations were only growing by 2% at the most. And a very big concern. And then as we have talked and know that all of a sudden the county started going through a reevaluation everything, and now then all of a sudden we were starting to get increases in valuation the last 3 years. Where it's going to be, we don't know this year, and we will talk about that at the end in regards to where valuations will be. But remember, needs minus resources equals state aid. On the resource side, we grow by 8-10% in valuations, and they're saying, school district, that's on you, not on us. So that's the catch-22. But I do have to say we had a positive when we did this county sends into the state our valuations, and this is the first year that we actually have a credit in our property taxes. So our, I think it was the ag value was greater than it was supposed to be allocated, and we got a credit of almost $29 million off of our valuation. So our valuation was $3.1 billion, and we got a credit of $30 million, and so we're down to $31.50 in regards to how much money how much valuation we'll have in the calculation of the state aid formula. Does that make sense? I'm sort of talking, but hopefully I'm communicating. It's a Stewart, you know.
You're not sort of talking, you're talking.
I know. Other than that, just to be aware of valuations and where we're going to be. The next piece, as we move through valuations and your requirements with this budget, this is a new piece I put in there because after last year and just really trying to make sure Dr. Rhodes and I met all the requirements of a hearing, I put in there what our basic requirements are for budget hearings. Number one, the big one is it doesn't matter if you access the 5% or not, you have to have a hearing. And that's a big piece. You just have to have the hearing. And there's a lot of requirements. So normally on a hearing you have 4 days that you have to hold a hearing by, which you don't count the publication date, but you can count the date of the hearing. But with the 5%, you have to have 1 week. And talking with everybody concerned, 1 week is 7 days. So therefore, it changes the dynamic of how we have to post that notice. Plus with our newspapers and how they're published, we got to be cognizant of that piece also. The other two big pieces will be an expenditure hearing and a property tax hearing. And like I said, I actually had it right on the first one, Skip. You know, August, if you want to do a hearing in August, that would be great. You know, it just gets it out there. You can always change it and then have some clarifying statements in the newspaper after that. The other piece, and we try to stay away from it, but it's still a hearing that we have to be cognizant of, is our joint public hearing. If for some reason we would go above our what we're in theory allocated based upon a state formula, then we would have to have a joint public hearing. And everybody outside of Justin has been on it where we've held a joint public hearing and then we tried to stay away from it last year because of what goes on. So it becomes more of people come out to talk about every little thing.
Their valuations mainly.
Yeah, their valuations more than anything else. So it becomes an interesting dynamic. But otherwise, we try to stay away from that piece.
Nobody.
I don't
had
see
to-
that being an issue. And I
Yeah,
mean, the idea is to stay away because we're not increasing
right.
Correct.
expenditures that
Correct.
amount. I mean, the public hearing is also not fun unless you take some popcorn and use it as entertainment. then it counts.
And
So
don't
I
think-
agree, we
There were
want to
no
avoid
entities
the-
in our county that attended last year,
No.
right?
Nope.
They
That is
they
correct.
did not have to
That's
overlook
correct.
last year at all.
Yeah, I think that's very positive for.
And the college is out of it now because of the
Yeah.
state funding. They didn't pass, I'm getting to my head, you know, they had a bill where every member of every board that has to appear all had to be there. I don't know if that passed.
I don't think it would pass.
They had a bill in the legislature that stated if you have this hearing in your, every member of each board, like if the North Platte Public Schools has to present, all of us have to be there. If the commissioners have it, they have to be there. If, you know, whatever it is that had to, city council, if they have to all appear, then you all have to be there. But I didn't think it passed, and I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't come back though.
No.
Yeah, because some counties have to have them do have them every year.
I also put in there sort of where our levy has been over the last 3 years, so you can get an idea of where we've been, and then we can have a conversation about where we're going in the future here. This is a new piece here too, our property tax request. I put that information in just for mostly information, even though obviously each year it's dependent upon our budget. But it's always helpful information so that if somebody asks you, well, you've always increased, you know, $1 million, well, then you can always go back to this document and say, okay, where have we been in regards to our property tax request for our general fund, building fund, and QC property? I did not include, I think in 21-22 was a bond, and I didn't include that because it was just paying off the bonds either for Lake or the high school, and it was minor compared to the three major funds that we're dealing with at this point in time. After that, I really just put in some information in regards to salaries, other items such as substitutes, and then with the Affordable Care Act, what we have to do for health insurance. So that's just making you aware of information that we have to do for budgeting as well as requirements by the federal level. But I did, and another new piece is our contribution rate. And I really appreciate the committee of the whole last Thursday because you had a really good discussion in regards to where we're going with Nebraska retirement. So I felt like just so that everybody is aware of it, you can always reference back to this if you ever need to, is the amount of retirement that our employees have to put in, as well as what the school district has to match for retirement moving forward. So they sent out, NPPS sent out a sort of a one-page form in regards to how funding will occur in the future. And they took that from the legislative bill that went through. And so normally we were always at 9.75 and 9.85 for reimbursement to NPPS. This year, because of our actuarial study at Nebraska Public Employees Retirement Board, they were between 98 and 100%, so we'll be at 8% starting July 1 and 8.08 for the district on July 1. And that's for 1 year. And NPPS will send something out every year after they get their actuarial study done. And I think we heard yesterday on our legislative one, November, December. And then from there, they will then communicate out the adjustments accordingly to what school districts are required to put into but it'll always begin on July 1. And that correlates to them, not school districts. That correlates to the calendar year for the retirement board because they begin July 1. Always, we have transfers within the district. First of all, we try to budget for various transfers within in the general fund, which supports the depreciation and employee benefit fund. You can see all the items that we've put into there. I show that in this month's financial report, how much transfers we have had. In that, Dr. Rhodes and I talked and we downscaled a couple of the transfers this year, just to ensure, as we're looking at reserves and what we need to do. I do want to let you know on just textbook replacement, as we look at the financial report, we were only putting in like 150, 200,000 5 years ago. And because of costs of material, that has grown over the years. And we try to do I tried to do a smoothing process, but because of that constant increase in materials that teaching and learning had to do, all of a sudden that number has been a little bit fluid trying to address that. But otherwise, we try to account for all of those. I do not put anything into...
Can I stop you real quick,
Oh,
sir,
yeah,
on
I'm
that?
sorry.
Because I had a question about textbook replacement. So what is that including? If our students are one-to-one and primarily using their devices, what are we replacing with textbooks?
So it's all like the agreement for like a contract. So in order to access the curriculum online, I mean, we do have consumable text too, so they get consumables every year. That's how most of the companies do it now. But then it's just accessing their platform and their materials. Even though we have some printed copies and they access it online, we still have to pay for them to get that access.
Okay.
So it's still just as much of a cost,
So it may be where I say textbook replacement, but it could be curriculum online in comparison to.
Yeah, that's a little bit confusing. I don't know how hard it would be to change our language around that. But to me, textbook replacement means you're buying textbooks, not, you know what I mean?
It's really like your whole platform.
Yes. So are
Platform is
those...
probably the right word to use.
Platform.
Platform's a good word, yes.
Yeah.
Are those expenses going up because it's more expensive to do digital curriculum? I mean, is that costing us more than printed textbooks were costing us?
I think so, because they have to manage that whole side of things too. I mean, as we do with our tech department, but yeah,
Right.
it is more expensive. And just the cost of
Have we
everything.
done any considering as far as are there options for our students to utilize more concrete textbooks and less time on computers? Are there still curriculum options out there for that?
Yeah, there is. It's really like dual. You kind of have to access them both. So like at elementary, they have, the teachers use the platform a lot for teaching practices, but then they're doing their materials and they're writing in their consumable workbooks. So it's not just that they're on the computers a lot.
But they don't have an actual textbook.
No, like we have, for example, social studies, instead of an actual textbook, it comes as like a weekly, like paper flyer. So every week it's a new flyer like that. But most of the textbook per se is like science, it's in that consumable text. So they'll be like reading a paragraph or a section and then they're answering questions and things like that, so. Yeah, I can show you some, it might help you to see it, because
Yeah, I think
it's kind
so,
of like
because
a hybrid.
it is a little, I don't want to use the word concerning, but it draws my attention that we should be using less printed materials, which I'm actually not in favor of that, just so you know. I think it's good to have a book in your hands. But it's concerning that we have less in our hands and it's costing more. So I'm not sure maybe what we're gaining in that. I understand needing to increase that, but if we're increasing, I mean, $100,000 on an increase of textbook replacement is pretty substantial. So I would want to know what's that getting us in return, that investment, you know? That's a lot of money.
So does this curriculum change every year and we have to go up every year, or?
No, so we follow an adoption cycle, so it's about every 7 years. So we, cycle through like ELA, for example, 2 years ago, it was over 7 years that we had adopted that. So we rotate, might be ELA, and then it was math, this coming year it's science. So every year we're replacing and updating our materials, but each content area is about 7 to 10 years.
And a lot of that is driven by what the state is requiring.
correct.
Yeah, because the content standards are updated every 7 years, so then once they're updated, we make sure that our resources match the standards, and so we do that alignment and adopt new materials.
Okay?
I may have more questions on
That's
that,
fine.
but that answers your question for right now.
I also told you that the general fund supports employee benefit fund. We do not put any dollar amount. We just know that we're going to have the sick leave incentive. That's been in about 15 years now. 10, something like that. And that fluctuates. This year we had probably, I want to say 8 employees. But the previous couple of years, we only had 3 or 4. So that number is fluid in regards to how much money we have to transfer over there to cover sick leave incentives that are going out. The other piece that I noticed the last couple of years, as people have used sick leave, that was a little bit less than even the standard 75. The other item is that because we negotiated this year where teachers wanted less in sick leave and more in discretionary leave, that, going forward, you're going to have less payment for sick leave incentive because they'll have less in their sick leave bank. So, and maybe just to remind everybody is why we did the sick leave incentive is that was an incentive for our teachers to stay in the classroom to teach. And I mean, yes, if they are sick, we understand that, but instead of just using it because, they felt bad, instead of coming in and teaching, because it costs us money to have a substitute there, that we would reimburse them down the road for that sick leave incentive.
That incentive came in years and years ago, by the way.
Right.
Not just, but it got reformatted.
What is can you remind us what's the amount, like, per day? What's the incentive?
$210.
210. That's for the
Substitute
sub.
pay.
What's the incentive amount? Like if you,
No, it's 210. We pay
Oh,
for
it's the
we-
same as the
it's
sub rate.
same. Right,
Okay.
right. So they only get, because in theory, we either pay you or we pay a sub. So that's why we said we're doing the sub rate.
It's always been tied to the sub rate.
gotcha, okay.
We do transfer
And-
some, sorry.
And it's frozen at 75 days.
It was. Yeah,
Yeah,
it'll be
oh.
64
Yeah, no.
going forward. Unless somebody, we didn't jeopardize anybody if they
Grandfathered
had.
them in.
We grandfathered them in if they were
Right. If they
over
already
64. But if they get down to 64 below, then they don't get it back up to 75. You can see all of the money in our depreciation fund, how we've allocated towards certain projects such as, the track, the turf. The turf will probably have to be re-updated here in another 3 years. We had somebody come out last year and take a look at it and said it was, holding up fairly well. So we should be fine for at least another 3 or so years. Track has been fine. We just make sure that we have money there. So, track replacement or at least an overlay will run you $100,000 or so. So if we have money laying there, then you don't all of a sudden, hey, by the way, we're going to have to increase our budget by this one. And if you put it over a course of time, it makes it a little bit simpler. Finally, then in our activity fund, I haven't put money in there. I haven't put a dollar amount in there. I know we've talked about this, but we try to support our activities in one capacity, our 7th and 8th grade athletics, because we do travel a little bit. And then finally, other activities that go on that they do go to state, or they travel to other venues further than normal. We have provided them a little bit of incentive from our general fund to our activity fund. I have put this in here since, and I want to say about 10 years ago, it came to me, Lindsay was talking, you had a good question in regards to textbook replacement, and I look at Lindsay and Vicki. When you think about a business, and I heard it when I was listening to CNBC one day, businesses do a lot of research and development. You're continually seeing ads coming out for something new, something amazing. It's because they've done research and development. School districts are no different. they're continually having to, as Lindsay said, on a cycle per state on updating curriculum and everything else associated with classroom instruction on a cycle set by the state. So they're doing, in essence, development of new curriculum that has to occur within the classroom. And so in that, we try to budget accordingly. And I just put it out there that, you know, our research and development for that curriculum work is running at about 3.24%. So if you think about business, what they do, you know, we take a lot on ourselves within the district to help continually be prepared for what is coming out on the forefront for curriculum and development in the future here. And as Lindsay said, and I put it in here, science curriculum per the state is coming up for renew, so you're going to see a lot of teachers now evaluating the science curriculum, evaluating curriculum that's out there, and then trying to implement accordingly moving forward.
And that, so with that example in mind, there were very minor changes to the science standards. My understanding was that there were very minor, basically language changes. Are there times that we review curriculum after standards have changed and say what we're using is great, we don't need to spend the money to upgrade?
Yep, we always keep that as one option.
Okay.
We do still, because all of our subscriptions end, so we have a 7-year subscription, so if we would adopt the same curriculum, it would still cost a significant amount because they ship us resources every year in those consumable texts, and then all of our digital access, professional development as new teachers come in, things like that, that's all included in that cost. So it really wouldn't be a cost savings to stay with the same curriculum.
Gotcha.
Just a little bit less professional development probably.
Okay.
Okay. Just to remind you, I put out here, you know, ESSA grants. I probably should have listed all the grants that we deal with now that I'm thinking about it, but, you know, the big ones that we have is ESSA, which is Title I, Title II, and Title IV, and then IDEA, which is special ed, and all of those that they deal with. And then we have a myriad of other smaller grants that have come in over the course of time. And in that, just quickly, because I have it in front of me here, we set our total grant budget right now, just for the ones that we have, is around 3.6 million. So, but we try to ensure that, you know, some of us, Carrie, Brandy, are always going out and finding additional grants. So we always want to make sure we have some additional budget authority moving forward. This is a new one on page 11. I put in there our property liability and workers' comp programs and what we have done over the course of the last 6 years. 1920 we were with AliCap, and then you can see how much our insurance has increased. It's number one, as we know and we see across the nation, you know, devastation that's going on. Those costs have increased. You know, we continually hear each year that, you know, property or something else is going up by 15%. And so we're working continually with Hub right now on EMC to make sure where the insurance is going to be and what are the reasons behind this. Workers' comp is another hard one. We try to control the costs as best we can. Lori and I continually evaluate with Hub about, you know, where we are with some of our staff, making sure they're taken care of, but are we controlling cost on that piece? Moving forward, we put out, I just show you certified budget authority. I've done that over the years. It's a number. If all of a sudden we were growing exponentially with sustainable beef or something else, we would have that budget authority. But as you know, looking at our budget, and we can take into account some exclusions, we're dramatically under that number. But it does, you know, gives us the ability, if ever something would happen. Some of the districts, such as Gretna, Elkhorn, probably access a lot of that unused budget authority or certified budget authority because of their growth continually in their school district. Finally, on page 12, I just want to say, we're always concerned about cash reserve, and we're constantly watching that. We watch it every month. We show that, but I think, looking forward, trying to make sure we tie our budget to the strategic plan. 3 items that I was pulling out was, first of all, focus our work on PLCs, which are professional learning communities. Continue the work on collaboration and culture in the district. And then finally, going through our final ADCO this year, our building administrators and teachers are now going to work on question 3 and 4 of PLCs, which are intervention and enrichment within the classroom. So that's what we want to try. That's what we're going to be focusing on this next year as we move forward with the budget. And then finally, if we had bond fund in there, you'd see bond fund information, but really at this point in time, all we have left to pay on bonds is our qualified capital purpose undertaking fund. And in that, you can see the last 2 years worth of payments. And those occur in December. So in December of 2026 will be the last payment.
So if we were to fill in the chart on page 7 where you've got all the different levies listed out, what will be our QC cost?
Oh, I'll get
We're
to
getting
that
there?
here, and we're gonna
Okay.
get,
Perfect.
you're jumping ahead.
All right.
All right. But yes, we will get to that.
Okay.
So now, they're not page numbers only because these are all either documents that have been provided to me or within a spreadsheet, so I don't, trying to figure out how they merge into a PDF and trying to put numbers on it.
I can help you with that.
That one I haven't figured out yet, so.
Charles has been busy, so.
Yes. So first of all, you can see this is what we get back from the state every year in October, really addressing our certified school adjusted valuation. And if you can see on the bottom, did I have a typo? I said 29? It's 24. Yeah, I have a typo. Anyway, you can see that they adjusted. I brought in the wrong one. Sorry. You can see on your document here, right here, I brought in the wrong one. I apologize. If you give me 1 minute, I'm going to show you this.
We'll go to the bathroom while you find that.
Okay. We were re-updating everything, and I tried to pull stuff in, and I grabbed the wrong year, and that was just me trying to grab some information.
So we should ignore this page.
Ignore that page. Very good. Thank you, Emily. There we go. This is the document that we got here in October of 2024 that sets the valuation for our state aid. And I can have Dr. Rhodes send this out on a weekly update. But in that, you can see at the bottom right, a minus 29 million, which the bulk of it was from, I guess I said ag, but it was residential real property. Those were valued above the 98% threshold. So they gave us a credit of 38.7 million, and then we had some variable factors that needed to be brought up. So what that means is that even though when we were setting our property taxes last year for the district with a $3,189,000 valuation, for calculation of state aid for 25-26, we all of a sudden had a credit of 29 million. So basically saying that, oh, by the way, the state now gets to fund a portion of your budget because we're going to decrease your valuation accordingly.
Lowers your local effort
Right.
within the formula is
Right.
what this did. Anytime you have an adjustment from that previous tax year that is down, it helps you in the state aid formula.
We, and I'll ask the board, we go through that state aid formula calculation in February. So the documents that we have here are just that information along with the certified state aid. Once again, we went through and sort of walked through the basic funding and the needs side of the formula with our resource side and then how much state aid we're going to get. This year, though, because of how the state aid is calculated, the state took out $600 worth of foundation aid and put it toward it's foundation aid outside of resources, and then they put the remaining portion within foundation aid. So we still, in essence, we're at $5.1 million of foundation aid. So when we look at it, the state is saying on this page that because our valuation went up 8%, that the district should be able to support your need side of the formula at 1.9 million for all of our needs that they have calculated. Now they did, as you look through it, there's still a loss in state aid, but that's the thing that we're always dealing with is the amount of money that the state pushes back upon the school districts for valuations.
I have a question on here, on our cost per pupil, up on the page that you're on there. Is that our cost
No.
per pupil? Okay, that's the
That goes
average
to
that
if you
comes
go to
from
the
over
next
here.
page, what the state does is takes our formula students for 24-25 and then compares us to 10 smaller and 10 larger. And then from there, they weight those accordingly, cost per pupil. So for example, Grand Island and Ralston are the two smallest school districts, or the two smallest cost per pupil districts. And then Waverly and Westside are the two larger. Those get thrown out, and then they take the average of the remaining ones
And that's
to
what
come
gives us
up
this
with.
10,131, and then that's plugged
right.
in over here.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, correct.
So
And then-
our negative 0.3% beneath that, can you tell us what's that number there? What's that referencing?
That's referencing, so that's basically saying the previous year in 24-25, our cost per pupil was at 10 million or 10,165. This year it's at 10,131.
Okay,
So
but that's
what-
not our cost per pupil, so
No,
that
that's-
minus 0.3 is
the-
not in reference to North Platte Public
No,
Schools.
it's
in
reference
reference to this array
tier.
of schools, basically.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
So, and actually I put in there that you can see the calculation of tier schools of the previous year.
Okay.
The one additional comparison that I did when we went through our state aid was, I looked at the enrollment as well as the cost per pupil for our tier schools and just put them in there just to see where they were. And as you go through it, you're going to see some positives, some negatives on enrollment. But, for North Platte, we did lose 45 students, but we also reduced our cost per pupil by 665. So we knew going into the end of the 23-24 school year, when they did that calculation, we had reduced our expenditures to ensure, why we're seeing that reduction, which in essence helped us as we see in that calculation where we're at $10,379 per pupil this last year. We're almost in the middle, or close to the middle of where comparison to our tier of schools. So we're continually doing better in regards to our expenditures in the district.
Yeah, man, some of these schools decreased their enrollment and significantly increased their cost per pupil.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and it all depends. I mean, they could be seeing where, or thinking that they're gonna have additional expenditures because of something going on in their district, and all of a sudden it doesn't pan out. Right now, we're holding our own. We're trying to control as much as we can. And then, no matter what, even though I show you a comparison of 4 years, I always put in there what we received from the state on state aid certification, so you can get an idea that, the data that I pull, even though I can predict some preliminary data coming in November, December, we get the official one sometimes around March 1, and then we can have that, so then we know where it is. We get money for our K-12 students, as well as we get money for our early childhood students. Questions before I go forward?
What are looks like there's like 4 different categories of early childhood. on it.
It's our different locations. 003 is Buffalo.
Gotcha.
006
So as they all move to
is
one
Cody.
location, we'll
It'll
see
be
one
all
line there.
003. And we report, those are, the one students that are at 485 are part-time
Okay.
4-year-olds, and then the 982 are our full-day preschool. Next year, we don't have any part-time, we just have full.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
Yep, we have 2 part-time.
Oh,
counselors.
okay.
Uh-huh.
So we'll see, you'll see
So
two
you'll see
different
part-time
numbers
and
next year, one for full days and one for part days.
Good. I'm glad that we're leaving the part-time. I think that that's important with preschool. I know we don't get as much credit for them on here,
Yeah,
but
that's good actually.
Any other questions about these documents before we move forward? If there's something else or a little bit more clarification, please let me know so that we can make sure that we have that. I also provide you our budget authority. I showed you it in our wording back here, but I also provided the official document that's out there too, so that you can see that. So we've talked about this at the board meeting, but in our packet, we always try to look at where we are on cash reserves. And you can see where we have been over the course of the last 4 years. Now, a couple of things. Number one, this is our budget, not actual, and that will come into play once you get the audit. But, we're trying to move our reserves up to almost 70%. As we talked, as we'll look at our financial report on Monday night, we're in a positive swing in our finances, as well as we've seen over the course of the last couple of months, our expenditures are decreasing. So in essence, we should be increasing that percentage a little bit more as we conclude this fiscal year.
would it be feasible to, in the next couple of years, be close to that 25% in cash reserves?
It should be, as we take a look at, how much taxes we raise, how we control our expenditures. If we can start shoving more money into our cash reserves, that would be great. And that's the discussion that we will probably have once we get to the general fund. We put $500,000 in our reserves. Now, we also experienced money coming from the state that all of a sudden backfilled property tax that were not assessed at the local level by the state. So, and that should be coming through here in the next few years. So in a combination with that, controlling our expenditures, we should be pushing more toward 25%.
Okay. Without really having to increase a levy to get there. We can
Well,
do that through
that could be that has to be a discussion, because we want to, the state's gonna pay you accordingly of what you assess on property taxes. So it's not relative to a levy, it's gonna be relative to how much taxes you are and how much they're gonna reduce. Because remembering our legislative Zoom the other day, they were talking about how 30% of your taxes levied comes back to you with a property tax, I want to say credit. And all of a sudden I thought, oh, well, okay, now I understand a little bit more in regards to what they're doing. So in essence, it doesn't matter, it matters, but it doesn't matter in regards to how much taxes you raise, because you know, in theory, 30% will be coming back from the state in support of property tax reduction. So that has to be a combination in regards to where we're going to go on taxes in comparison to what we know will happen at the state. So, Emily, when you were jumping ahead in regards to where our levy was going to be. This is where we're looking, and it's all of the funds that we have, that we oversee, broken down into two: property taxes and non-property taxes. Just in general, just a note, we have to have budget authority to expend. So it doesn't matter if it's non-property tax supported funds, we have to have that budget authority. And I'll mention a few of them as we go through. But you can see where we're going to be in regards to our funds in the future here and where we should be. Now, right now, I only have 2% increase on valuation. Do we know where that's going to be? Well, we'll have a discussion here just right when we're concluding this budget workshop. But we do not know that, nor will we know it here next week. It probably will be around the 15th to the 20th that we get preliminary evaluations from the county in regards to.
In June.
Yep, in June.
Yeah.
Yep. But
I can
we'll
tell
go.
you, based on my yellow card I received in the mail, it is more than 2%.
Well,
Closer to 10.
so it's.
Mine was
and
8.3.
That was something that we were having a discussion about, because we know that the county is going through various pockets of assessment. So obviously, they're more in the northwest corridor of the community in regards to
Well, they've
valuation.
increased ours 10% every year.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I mean, I'm
I
just
guess
like.
we're just lucky, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. We try to figure out where they're gonna be, and we don't know.
Yeah.
We think they're here, but
Well,
all
the
over.
one property we've seen the most increase, that adds up, because we're over by Madison Middle School,
Right.
and that's, I mean, we've probably had a 30% increase in the last couple of years total. It's insane, but, yeah, I don't know, it is a little confusing, but I would say your 2% is probably pretty low
yeah.
on
Well,
that.
but
Yes.
as you go back to the one document in here, you can see, yeah, the last 2 years, we had great growth, but the previous ones we weren't. And so I tried to be a little bit conservative
Right.
as we're starting out. Now, after June, whatever, we'll have a whole different discussion at the committee of the whole in regards to where our budget will be in regards to valuation, because we will know that it's not, the number that they give preliminary is not solid, but we know that
It's
probably
pretty-
around
it's
the
pretty close,
percentage
though.
will be. So we could
What
say
they
if it's
certify.
9%, then we could just use that 9% for calculation purposes.
Right.
So, this document is a Bernice document. She wanted one page that really, for Dr. McDonald, that Bernice was a lady that advocated to the county, the city, and the school district in regards to controlling as much as possible. And we expected her at board meetings. And
She came every month until COVID hit. And then we didn't see her again. But she's still got a packet though.
Oh, yeah.
Every month.
So,
She was in her 90s.
so,
She has since passed away, but yeah.
this year? Or
Came
last
every
year?
month. Every month.
That's what I thought.
You have to admire that.
Sharp as a tack.
Yeah, she's a neat lady.
But this document just really gives a good summary, quick snapshot of where all the funds are and where we project them to be moving forward as far as the district is concerned, and how much increase we are seeing. Number one, 0.18% increase on our property tax supported funds. But what we can see is that the total amount will be $66,293,000 for the next year right now tentatively. We'll talk about where our taxes are going to be, as well as where our budget is going to be moving forward. Now, maybe just want to reemphasize depreciation fund, employee benefit fund. We just have to have a budget authority. We're not going to say we spend all of that, especially like in nutrition. It's all contingent upon the number of students eating. But it just gives us that little bit of a cushion. Same way with activities. Depending upon the year, that could push the 2 million. Right now, it's sitting at about 1.5. And then cooperating is 100,000, but that has dramatically reduced over the course of the past years.
So I think on the, there's been talk for, last 3 or 4 years on school spending. And so as you know, when we worked through the budget with the board a year ago, we brought 3 or 4 different proposals, and you challenged us to go back to the drawing board, not back to the board, and continue to look at those numbers and come back with a plan, and which I think we did. And so even with this, just this projection of a budget, when you look specifically at the top left quadrant of the document that's up on the screen, you'll notice I really feel like we're keeping our expenses, projected expenses, in line. I mean, that 0.18% increase on those tax-supported funds. When you think about the, for instance, you're going to see this in documents, when you look at salaries and benefits and how that's increased, and knowing that, through negotiations, it is what it is with your non-supervisory certificated staff, and then with our pair agreement on those different types of, that are more automatic increases, you see a pretty terrific increase in the expenditures of just salaries and benefits across the district. And so what Mr. Simpson and I have done is we had an initial budget, and then we went through and we cut a bunch out of the other line items that were not salaries and benefits. And so what we wanted to bring to you this year was more of a final draft of a budget, and then get your input on. But when you think about salary increases of 3 to 4%, and in a budget like ours, 85% of your total general fund budget is salary and benefits. I think what we've tried to do is limit the projected expenditures of everything else across the district for 2025, 2026. So, moving past this document, you do have, as Dr. Rhodes mentioned, a little bit more detail in regards to the general fund. You can see the expenditures on the top part, and as he mentioned, trying to control, all of our expenditures except for salaries and benefits, because obviously, number one, we negotiate with various parties. So, we've tried to keep that in line with the state or other school districts, not the state. And then as we negotiate accordingly. So you can see our total expenditures for the general fund is $54 million. Right now, the levy is the same at 92 cents, and it's only generating $587,000 more for the general fund. That really does put a little bit of pressure on our reserves.
but in the process, that's where we have to have the discussion. And I'm going to say this, we probably have to have a discussion at the committee of the whole, once we know valuation increases, where we want to be with property taxes, because as I said, it's not about levy, it's about taxes, because we'll get that backfill from the state no matter what. So should we, I'm not saying go to the $1.05, because number one, that would push us into a joint public hearing, and that would not be wise. But do we want to take a look at an increased number, like we did last year? We had, A1, B1, C1, and in the process, what would be the best solution to meeting the needs in the district moving forward? And that's where we need to be based upon it. And, if it comes in at 2%, then it comes in at 2%. I don't know, but we'll wait and see. But right now, we're starting at a point. You have that line that's drawn, and then from there, changes can occur accordingly.
So theoretically, right now, the numbers we're considering would be keeping in mind this 2% estimated increase on property taxes and keeping our levy the same.
Correct.
These are the numbers that we're looking at. So theoretically, if that 2% comes back and we realize valuation increases are 8% or whatever that may be, we might be in a position, if we move forward with this proposed budget, to lower the levy again. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
But you also have to realize, you have to then also say, okay, how does that affect reserves?
Sure.
How does that, affect moving forward as far as where you want to be district-wide too? And if you want, if you want to keep the levy the same and it's a greater increase, do you want to go to that number as far as the whole property tax goes too? If you turn, you can see it here. If you go to this page,
Actually, 27.
thank you, 27. Thank you, I appreciate that. This is, I've done it the last couple of years because when we didn't want to go into a joint public hearing, we wanted to make sure where that threshold was going to fall, and we wanted to make sure, because we will not know that number. Just a reminder, we will get certified valuations on August 20th, so we will not know, number one, the true real growth in the district until August 20th. So this is using last year's data to roughly calculate where we're going to be. It does use the current prior year non-bond property tax request of 30.2 million. But calculating that out, we would have to be at 31.9 million. And right now, with just the two numbers that we have, keeping in mind, these are just preliminary numbers for the building fund and the general fund, that, we would be under that number and not have to go to a joint public hearing. And as Dr. Rhodes and I did last year, we continually monitored that number and made sure that we were going to be under where we were. And when we went through our various scenarios the last time, we had those numbers down below to make sure that, are we going to be at that or not? So the state controls us on a joint public hearing, but they also control us on how much property tax authority that we can have. And so, Bryce, this is preliminary. It probably will not change. But listening the other day, the State Department's going to probably get us out the certified property tax authority document that we can update this accordingly probably within the next week. But, he had put this out mid-February, just preliminary numbers, and this is where we are. So if anything, they could say that, we can increase our property tax authority up to 33.6 million. If the board did access 5%, you could actually go up to 36. That would mean multiple steps. Number one, obviously, you would have to increase the levy to even get even close to that number. Second of all, you would then go, I would have to go to a joint public hearing. So you would have multiple items to go through. But all this really does at this point in time is give you authority. It doesn't say that you have to use it. It's just really mostly authority to do something if you choose to. But like I put in there, you still have to hold the hearing, whether or not you have the motion to access it. You just hold the hearing, and that's all you do. Anything else, Dr. Rhodes, before I just conclude with the building fund and the QC puff?
No, I don't think so. I think one of the things I would ask the board to consider a little bit, and Mr. Simpson's going to go through that special building fund. The diligence of the board and past boards and Mr. Simpson as it relates to the maintaining of buildings. A lot of that has been the decision to keep that building fund as solvent as possible, and so HVAC systems, roofs, all those different types of things. You know, I was telling the officers earlier that you don't know you have roof leaks until it rains, and I think every one of our flat roofs had leaks. Mm-hmm. And so you have special building fund or depreciation to reach down into and take care of those. But I think one of the things that you could consider in regards to general fund, and I just mentioned this for your consideration, you're going to have a receipt in the special building fund that I don't think this shows, and if it does, Stuart, correct me, I don't think this shows the sale of Osgood in it. So the sale of Osgood, those funds will go in the special building fund. So you might have an opportunity to shift some of the property tax funds from the special building fund to the general fund to keep working on that cash reserve. So you potentially could reduce the tax asking in the special building fund for just say $400,000, and you could shift that $400,000 to general fund, and we'd line item that like we did a year ago with the $500,000 that the board was really dedicated to building that cash reserve. We had a line item of $500,000 for cash reserve. So I mean, I just think those are some things that you think a little bit about. As we move forward. Typically, I think we've tried to generate about $750,000 into the special building fund every year. And so that may be something that you want to think about is to continue to look at growing that cash reserve. Maybe you shift a few of those cents over to the general fund.
My thought would be, I think that's a really good idea, honestly, because I think we've done a good job of maintaining that special building fund. I think that additional revenue coming in there should be reallocated into cash reserves. I think that's a really good idea, and I had not even considered that. And my other thought would be, so if you take, for instance, that $400,000 there and kind of shift it over to where it could go into our reserves, if we do see an increase on this 2% here, you know, even if it's 4%, based on these figures, that's about another $500,000-$600,000 that we would see a variance for. My thought would be, if that happens, I would love to see us be able to put $1 million into our reserves.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Take that 600 we see potentially over here, that 400 from Osgood, and that should get us a lot closer to our goal with our cash reserves without having to increase taxes on anybody. So that's what I would love to see happen. I would think if valuations go like I'm thinking, we could probably do that and still lower our levy. So
I think you're right, yeah.
Just the last two pieces qualified. We're going to be still continually paying off our bonds for another couple of years. And then finally, I did talk to you about, this is last year's valuation. They send it to me broken down by the various areas. So once I get that information, I will provide it for you. And then we can see where we're heading in regards to evaluations. Now, last year it said, I'm just noticing this now, it said 10%. We only, after the state had dealt with railroad and public service property, that number, and I don't get the detail until October, went down a little bit, so it went from 10 to 8.9, so just FYI. Questions? That's the budget for preliminary.
Until we get specifics from everything. I think it's very good. I think it keeps us in line, very similar to last year. I really do. With the idea of maybe even being able to put more in reserves, because that's one of my been my main concern for a while, in case something would happen. But I like this, and I appreciate all the work you two have gone through and done this, but this really looks good to me. But we will again have to wait to see with the evaluations that come in and so forth. So I haven't received any cards, and I saw
one, but not the other yet.
I saw something on the news that if you don't get one, then it didn't go. But depending on the postal service, when they show up,
That's a good
could
point.
be a different
Right.
Could be July.
idea, because, we get some things that take 3 weeks to get to us from in town.
Right.
So, but I think this is very, very good. I really do. And I think it answers some of the concerns that people had last year with the A, B, and C ones, where we came up with the hybrid one after that. So that's what I think.
Well, at some point, I think we've got to quit working from behind as it relates to our district's budget. And Dr. McDonald has been working on a lot of different documents he's kind of doing 2 jobs right now. One at Boone Central, one for North Platte, but he's running some different numbers. And if you remember back in February, I believe the committee of the whole was at the high school, and we talked a little bit about taxes and what we were collecting, and that what we were asking for and what we were collecting, there was quite a difference there. And I think Mr. Simpson went back 2 or 3 years, and Mr. McDonald, or Dr. McDonald, put together a document that shows 11 years, and the total of uncollected taxes for North Platte Public Schools is $18 million. Averages $1.5 million a year. So it seems like we've always been working behind. You build this budget. Well, so if you're not getting in $1.5 million of taxes, all of a sudden you get to a year where you don't have a cash reserve, and then you're having to borrow money. And that's what's happened in our district. So to get that cash reserve up and only utilize it during hard times, I think once we get to that point, and I think then with property tax credits, with that new system coming into place, and maybe every February now we'll expect a few $1 million or $3 million from the state in property tax credit, I think we'll be in really, really good shape. And I think you couple that with the economic development, I still contend we're going to see student growth. I just really think we're going to see that. We have not seen that in my time here, but there's so much going on in our community. Certainly, young families are going to be coming to the community. So I think it's imperative that if we can, we build that cash reserve up a little bit more. I think the 25% comes to between $8 and $9 million that you could have in cash reserves.
Right.
Does that sound right?
Yep.
Right
Yep.
around in there. So
And we have how much right now?
we're
we're sitting at-
projecting 4.6, I
Right.
think, or something to that effect, with the addition of the $500,000
Sure.
that the board agreed to a year ago.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I think it's important for people to realize that by putting money into cash reserves, not only are we protecting ourselves from issues in the future, but we actually are saving money.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when we do the line of credit, for instance, I mean.
Paying interest.
It was over $10,000, wasn't it,
It looks,
in our interest?
if you compare it to a person, it's like a savings account.
Yes.
That you have.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you start thinking, okay, in a budget this big, oh, what's $10,000? But $10,000, if you start thinking of what as a district we could do with $10,000, it's
Right.
X percent of a whole other salary. It's, you know, those things
They
add
add-
up.
they add
And
up
if you do
over
that
time.
year after
Yeah.
year after year, they really make a big difference. So I think that is a wise choice. My only thought is, I did like last year how we had a couple of different options to look at, because it really allowed us as a board to consider what our priorities are and really think about, you know, our strategic plan and where we're going and what's important. I think this is a good first blush, but I also wonder if it would be good to see, you know, maybe this is the middle, this is like the B of what we saw last year. Because I know that there are some things that you referenced as maybe being priorities that I don't think have been added in here yet. Maybe there's an A that shows what that would look like.
Right.
And maybe there's a C that shows, I mean, when you look at a 0.18% increase on tax-supported funds, part of me wonders, what would you have to do to just have that be a zero? Because you're so close to zero. I mean, I wonder what that might look like. So that would maybe be my only thought, is just to kind of see what those options are. But I mean, I think this is a good start. It's hard when you don't have all the numbers.
Well, and like we said, when we get to the committee of the whole in June, we can probably at least have some options that we can talk about before the final number comes in.
I think the only increases, if you were to look at if you were to look at kind of the third to the last page, I believe, that has 23, 24 actual, and then the current budget year, and then that projection. So when Mr. Simpson and I went through it, we did eliminate a couple placeholder positions in salary and benefits. And so that, in my mind, that's what makes this budget tight. And I'll tell you where we're at with that. So we've had declining enrollment at the elementaries. So we have some of our elementaries, not a lot of them, a half dozen of them will be single tracks in some of our schools. And you know, traditionally, the 6 elementaries in the city boundaries have at minimum been 2-track. Well, you have 20 kids in a first grade class, so we didn't replace some of those positions. And that makes me a little nervous with potentially people moving in. So we took out, we basically, that salary and benefit is who we know for sure we're gonna have here next year across the district. That's all employees. And then I think about 350,000 we cut out of the other line items. The line items that we couldn't cut anything out of had to do with insurance and energy costs, because we know those are gonna go up. So all those other line items, we tried to just be really frugal and cut. I would say if we'd come back with an A, B, we would have this, and we'd probably have one that would add a couple staff to, is probably where we would be at. I don't know, and again, I don't want to speak for Mr. Simpson or Dr. McDonald, I don't know there's much more cutting we can do with what we've talked about this morning. And that's what I wanted to have that piece of it done prior to coming to the board. But I will tell you, there's probably 2 or 3 positions that would have been left in the event we get to 35 in one of our elementaries and have to hire a second first grade teacher, whatever the case may be. So that does make me a little nervous with this being kind of tight in terms of that.
Can you tell us, property services and other services, I know kind of generally what's in there, but how are those designated? Sorry, you already closed your mouth.
Fine. Hang on here. I shut it down. 'cause
Good
I-
question, yeah.
Because I noticed property services stayed the same, and then other services, there was a bit of an increase, which is that where, like, some of our insurance, or what
Yeah,
falls
I
under that?
I apologize, I shut it down.
Just to back up, going back on what Dr. Rhodes said, I know one of the things that I think we also have to think about is how many people are gonna walk in here in August
Yeah, I know.
and register kids. Because there still is a big mindset with people that, school's gonna start, so I moved here in July, I better go down and register my 5 kids to go to, let's say, Eisenhower, for example, since you're sitting here, the ex-principal there. And all of a sudden, that bumps 2 classes up. And so you have a very valid point there. I'm really concerned about what's going to happen in August. I really, really am. Because most people I know, they think about that. They
So
don't-
we do have, I guess, what you would call a contingency plan with that. Over the last 3 years, one of the things that we've really worked hard on is getting families to have their kids attend the school in their neighborhood.
Right.
In the neighborhood in which they live in. And we still have a long ways to go. I ran numbers the other day, and I will tell you, one of our elementaries should have about 340 kids in it right now, if all those kids were attending within that boundary. But having said that, we're going to be able to educate kids if they do come to us and we can't hire a position. But it may not be in their neighborhood school. Because we do have room in our buildings. We have plenty of room. It's just that certain neighborhoods are either full or are not full, is kind of where we're at right now. So we're going to meet the needs of our kids. We would just almost take a step back with what we've tried to do the last 3 years, because that's what the district had done for many years. You went to school where there was room in
Right.
the district, because we had over 4,000 kids across the district. So it didn't happen a lot, but it did happen where you were in McDonald, but you went to Eisenhower. And so we're going to meet the needs of our kids. I want to make sure that we're clear on that. It's just that it may not be within that neighborhood school.
Well, so many of our buildings are in such close proximity, really.
They're really not neighborhood schools,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're-
It's interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm working with Teaching and Learning and Kyle Kingston it's kind of sandbox is what it is, moving boundaries around. One of the things we're trying to do from an efficiency standpoint is to have our elementary boundaries so they're all kind of similar size in terms of the student enrollment in those buildings. And as we know, there's potentially a lot of growth that's going to happen that's going to fall in that Jefferson ward. So we're going to have to redraw that boundary that probably shifts some kids to McDonald, may shift some to Washington, Lincoln, but we're going to have to take a look at boundaries for sure.
Yeah, 'cause
With
that's
new
our
housing development, we're going to have
furthest
to do
east
that.
school. That's our furthest east school.
Yep.
If they build all of that.
Yes, for sure.
That they have proposed, yeah, I've thought about, and looking across from Eisenhower, what's going on there.
It's amazing to me that we've seen the opposite happen at Eisenhower with enrollment. We're projecting an enrollment in that building of 195 right now.
No.
And they've been hovering at about 200, 201 for most of the
So
24.
we want them to keep building houses over there.
What's
I
that?
said, so we want them to keep.
Yes, we
building
do
houses
want
over
them.
there.
Get Dixie ran through and get
Keep it
those
going.
single-family homes and the multifamily built, and yeah, for sure. But we are watching those things very
yeah.
closely, and Kyle's so good with, we have a GIS program that we utilize, so we can get in there and sandbox, and we've done it with our EL students to kind of see where all those kids are living at and those things, so. And we're just gonna have to do that with potential growth.
We give you enough time, Stuart.
Oh, yeah. more than enough, but that's okay. Purchase services includes like mileage to parents, our SRO program. Then we have just contracted services for special ed.
So that'd be like ESU 16, some of the
So
contracts
that's
we have with them.
purchased services.
That's purchase
Okay,
services.
so what's the property and the other?
Okay, so property is, I'm just, hang on here. That one's dealing more with our 188. I'm just going through there. That one's mostly just some minor costs like rental of buses or repair and replacement of our buses. That would be the biggest thing that would be coming through, as well as water and sewer for how we have to code that for our buildings. Then on the next one, which would be other services, that includes our insurance for the district right now, and then I'll just say field trips that we have budgeted accordingly at our various buildings, as well as a few other travel around the district, as well as just, what I want to say, part of being in an organization, like an ASB and so forth.
When do you expect the insurance rates?
Oh, those will probably be in late July.
Okay.
Tanner was working on it and still is waiting.
Do you have any idea?
No, he did not tell me because he was still waiting for them to get us back, so he
Okay.
has not said anything. But I know in the past, he's always been talking about maybe, 10% or more based upon what is happening around the nation. But he's still trying to evaluate that, and we'll be bringing in, will be talking to us more here in the next couple of weeks, and then in July, we'll bringing in information more from Dr. Rhodes and Dr. McDonald.
Okay. There won't be a 24%.
I hope not.
Like it was last year.
Yeah, I hope not.
Okay. Thanks.
Other questions? I'm gonna close my computer again.
Last chance.
I know.
Okay. Well, is there anything else that anybody wants to discuss or ask in regards to budget? Dr. Rhodes, anything else that you have?
I can't think of anything.
Just take it home and consume it, study it. I looked at it all online, and so forth, but
Yeah, I
again,
appreciate
I'll
it,
say,
having it so
I
far
like
in
it.
advance.
I do like it.
Good.
I think what we would like to do is have this as kind of one of the major agenda item on the June committee of the whole. And then I don't know is we'll necessarily need another retreat or workshop. What we can see kind of where we're at, see where valuations are projected, and we'll have a little bit better idea with that, and we can cement some of these numbers a little bit more then.
Yeah, I think we're much closer, this feels like we're much closer to an end goal than where we've been in the
I
last
think so,
couple of
too.
years from the first workshop, so.
Where do we meet this in June?
Eisenhower.
No, we're going to Eisenhower with, Mr. LaChapelle is done with his contract. So we're going to move Eisenhower down, and I believe it is Cody. I've got to get that changed on there. I believe it's going to be Cody. I'll send that out tomorrow in the update.
And my thought would be if anybody after today, as you're digesting this, and if you have questions and feel like we need to come back for another workshop or something outside of that committee of the whole, just let me know if you're feeling that way, and we can address that if we need to. But my thought would be, at this point, let's not plan on another budget workshop and just plan on that committee of the whole.
Perfect.
Unless I get flooded with emails tomorrow that say otherwise, so.
And I can take you to the curriculum if you want to just see kind of what it looks like.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
can show anybody that wants to come.
That sounds good for me.
So it has changed, so.
Okay. All right, well, if nothing else, then I would entertain a motion to close our work session.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Roll call.
Joanne Lynn Green.
Aye.
Emily Garrett.
Aye.
Cindy O'Connor.
Aye.
Skip Baltic.
Aye.
Angela Blazy.
Aye.
Justin Thompson.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned.